few cases that I have been pretty invested in since the very beginning, like Gypsy Rose, Natalia Grace, and in this video, we're specifically going to talk about Natalia Grace. If you guys haven't seen this documentary on HBO Max, I highly recommend it. 10 out of 10. Like, it's probably one of the best things I think I've watched in a hot minute. It's a 3-season series that really dives into who Natalia is and just some of her controversies and the families she's lived with. So Natalia, she was born in Ukraine and she was diagnosed with a rare form of dwarfism, and in 2010 she was adopted by an American family called the Barnetts. There was a lot of drama between Natalia's new adopted family, the Barnetts, and her, which was heavily covered in the first 2 seasons of The Curious Case of Natalia Grace. I'm not going to cover those 2 seasons. In this video, we are going to cover the newest season, which they claim is going to be the last season, season 3, and it has 4 episodes. And in this video, we're going to do episode 1 and episode 2. We all know that Natalia didn't have the best luck with her first adoptive family, the Barnetts. They ended up putting her in an apartment to raise herself when she was only 9 years old, and they were fighting with the courts for years, claiming that she was a full-grown adult at the time, even though she was only 9, and they finally got a DNA test last year to prove that she was 9 years old at the time she was living on her own. Well, she ended up getting adopted into a new family called the Demand family, which consists of Cynthia and Antoine. And Antoine is a preacher, and they have their own church, and they have a large family. There's 8 other kids besides Natalia. They ended season 2 showing Natalia getting adopted by this new family, and it seemed like a really structured family, and it seemed like Natalia was really starting things off on a good foot for once, and I was excited for her. And then at the end of the episode, suddenly Antoine calls the producers and says, "Oh hell no, this is not about to work. You guys don't even know the gist of what Natalia has done to us." They called her evil, pretty much acted like she was shady as hell, and they didn't want to go into detail about what exactly happened. They just said, "I think it's best if you guys get on the next plane and get down here as soon as possible." All they would really say is that Natalia was talking to this man, he got in her head, and now she suddenly wanted to leave. And they said that they wanted the producers to get out there so they could tell their side and try to get ahead of the narrative. And that's one thing I noticed Antoine and Cynthia are going to do, is try to get ahead of a narrative. So by the time the producers finally landed, they call Antoine to let him know they're about to pull up. And Antoine was like, "Yeah, actually, you guys don't need to come anymore. We worked things out. Natalia's gonna stay." And the producers were like, "Okay, but what's up with the sudden change of heart?" So they were able to convince Antoine to still let them pull up to see what was going on. They pull up and they walk inside, and the producers ask Natalia what happened, and Antoine took over the whole conversation. He was completely speaking for Natalia, so she wouldn't have to speak, trying to control the narrative. And he was like, "Well, Natalia wasn't a very good girl. She started talking to this man. She let the devil tempt her, but now she sees what she did wrong, and she wants to stay here now. And now we're going to put some really strict rules into place. We're going to turn off the internet altogether. We're going to take her cell phone and any electronics or means she has to talk to anyone outside this house. Yeah, we're pretty much going to cut that off, even though she is over 20 plus years old." And Natalia was just being quiet and just sitting there. And I could just tell by how quiet she was being and how Antoine was controlling the narrative that there's more that wasn't being spoken on. But Natalia kind of reminds me of, like, you know, a puppy or a dog that gets beat by its owner. Once the owner comes around, all of a sudden the dog's walking around with its tail between its legs and just being really shy. And that's what I'm getting from Natalia when she's around Antoine and Cynthia. I felt felt uncomfortable watching it from my TV. So I know the producers and camera crew had to feel awkward as hell being there in person, and you could tell they were not buying it. They left the house with an unpleasant feeling like something was terribly wrong, and they just didn't like the fact that Antoine was blaming everything on the devil. And they ended up reaching out to this lady called Nicole DePaul, and the DePaul family, they were actually supposed to adopt Natalia before she ended up going with Antoine and Cynthia. And honestly, felt like the DePaul family would have been a perfect fit. They were a family that seemed very structured. They were all affected by dwarfism. Natalia started dating this man online from the UK, and he's the one that almost convinced her to leave the very first time before she changed her mind. And he ended up reaching out to Nicole DePaul and letting her know, hey, I just wanted to let you know that Natalia is not okay. She's going through a lot. They're being abusive with her. They're putting their hands on her. They're stealing all her money. She doesn't have a savings account. She needs to get all these different surgeries due to her dwarfism, and they're not allowing her to get the surgeries or medical care she needs, and she wants to leave ASAP. So after that, Nicole DePaul made it her mission to figure out how she was going to get Natalia and save her from the man's family, letting her leave the house. But I guess she was able to use like a learning tablet where she was logged in. I guess there's some way you can send messages through there. So she was able to give her boyfriend the information to message through this learning app, but I guess he kept having to change like his username every single day so they wouldn't get caught. And he was able to give this information to Nicole, and she was able to reach out to Natalia. And as soon as she reached out through the learning app, Natalia immediately said, oh my god, I want to see you, I want to leave, and just was talking about how horrible it was at the man's house, and she needed to be saved ASAP. So Nicole went and talked to her husband, and she's like, look, Natalia needs my help, she's in danger. And the husband told her not to do it. He said, look, this girl has so much trauma, I don't think we are fully equipped on how to deal with that, and our house is so peaceful. This is a gamble. You really never know how these situations are going to go. But despite that, Nicole was headstrong about her decision to save Natalia. So she went and booked a driver because she can't drive because she's having a lot of back pain and just with her dwarfism. So she booked a driver to drive her and her daughter hours upon hours to go pick up Natalia. And since Natalia isn't allowed to leave her house, they made a plan to pull up Sunday morning when Natalia's at church. And Natalia said that she was going to just act like she was going to the bathroom, and while she's going to the bathroom, she's going to sneak out the door. I'm not gonna lie, I was scared, and I wasn't too optimistic that this whole plan was gonna work out, because I was just thinking, like, they were constantly breathing down Natalia's neck. All it takes is one person following Natalia to the bathroom, say one of Natalia's 8 other siblings that are in the man's family decide they want to accompany her to the bathroom that day, or maybe Cynthia wants to go to the bathroom with her, then the whole plan is out the window. And I fear, like, Natalia is so scared if she was put in a position like that face to face where Antoine and Cynthia are trying to stop her before she leaves or confronted her. I feel like she would have gave in and stayed there. So Nicole DePaul and her daughter pull up 5 minutes after church service starts at 7:05 in the morning, and they're outside waiting on Natalia. Somebody from the church comes out and confronts them and is like, are you guys here for somebody? Who are you picking up? And I feel like they played it off cool. They luckily didn't say they're waiting on Natalia. They're like, oh, don't worry, we're about to come inside, just wait. And next thing you know, Natalia came out, and they were able to put her in the car and drive off. And finally, Natalia has freedom. She's away from all the chaos. She doesn't have to worry about Antoine and Cynthia beating her all the time. But you would think she would be happy, but she was really emotional when she first got picked up and was questioning her decision on leaving. everything seemed to be going good. But then after a few minutes, Natalia decided to take Nicole's phone and text Cynthia and say, hey, I'm just letting you know I had to leave. I can't deal with being controlled anymore and told what to do. And I just want to be able to talk to my man. I'm sorry I had to come to this. And I love you. Goodbye. Then next thing you know, Cynthia is blowing up Nicole's phone back to back. She's like, call me now. And I don't even understand why Natalia felt it was necessary to text Cynthia so quick. Like, that tells me that she cares about Cynthia's feelings a lot more than Cynthia cares about her. But I just don't think the timing was the best. I feel like she should have waited a little bit, like waited till she was like settled down in the hotel or when she was back at Nicole's home, because that way I feel like it would put her in a safer position because she doesn't have to worry about Cynthia and Antoine coming for her. And that way I just feel like it would make everything a lot less stressful, because it ruined the whole mood because Cynthia was just calling back to back, and it's like, why do you want to bring this upon yourself as soon as you leave when you could have put it off for a little bit? And Cynthia was relentless. She was not about to give up without a fight. I mean, I don't blame Cynthia in that moment. If my child told me that they were leaving and not coming back, I'd probably be blowing up their phone too, because right then when they're first leaving, that's when you have the best chances of trying to convince them to come back. And I thought she was about to convince Natalia to come back for a moment. And Natalia was like, look, I can't talk right now, but I'm going to be okay. And the only thing that Cynthia wanted to know was, am I still going to be your payee for your disability check? I guess Natalia gets like $800 a month in a disability check, and that goes all to the Mans family. But that's not all. I guess they did the Dr. Phil show years ago, and they got over $300,000. Well, Natalia got over $300,000 for doing the show, and she gave it all to the Mans family, and they turned around and spent that money on a new trailer in Tennessee, and they're pretty much just funding their lifestyle off Natalia's money from being a known person and off all these different kids that they decided to adopt. I guess that's their hustle. They go out and they find these kids that are vulnerable or who have parents who aren't in the best positions to raise their children, and they prey on that, and they're like, oh, hey, sign your guardianship over to me. And then next thing you know, they start claiming these kids and getting a check for these kids every single month and getting government benefits like food stamps, disability, and then the tax credit you get every single year when you file your taxes. And I bet the Mans family was living large back when everybody was getting those stimulus checks, and they were giving out stimulus checks for people for every kid they had. Oh, you know they were loving that at that moment. Even Nicole pointed that out, that it was awfully funny that the only thing that Cynthia seemed to be concerned about was finances. Not if Natalia's okay, not are you going to be able to survive? No, it's all about, am I still going to get your money? And what was crazy to me is Natalia responded and said yes, and pretty much told Cynthia that she's allowed to get her disability checks every single month and keep all of it. Which, that made absolutely zero sense to me. Like, wouldn't you want some money to live off? Isn't that one of the reasons why you left the Mans family to begin with? I mean, they literally took all the money that you made over these years, where you should have a nice, hefty life savings, but instead, they put it all into their life savings. And Nicole, the lady who picked up Natalia, she's having second thoughts about her decision to pick up Natalia, because she's like, well, what is Natalia thinking, giving the Mans family her check still, and who does she think she's going to rely on, because I can't afford to support her every single month. And she kind of went into the whole situation thinking, okay, I can't really afford this, but at least Natalia will be able to support herself. But now she's finding out that's not going to be the case, and here the Mans family isn't even living with Natalia anymore, but they're still controlling and fully benefiting off her. I just could not understand her decision to do this whatsoever. I was sitting there pounding my head against the wall, trying to come up with one good reason, and the only thing that I could think of is maybe Natalia and her boyfriend came up with this grand scheme that Natalia's gonna act like she's giving her money to Cynthia, even though she's not, just so she can try to live off Nicole's money and stack her money. That way she can go live with Nicole for a few months, get on her feet, stack her money, and then when she's ready, she can go run away to the UK to live with her boyfriend or send him over to live with her and they can get their own place. And so they end up finally getting to a hotel, they settle down, they go shopping. Finally they get back to Nicole's home and she's showing off her house. Natalia's loving it. She has her own cell phone, and Christmas was just a few days away, and she got presents on Christmas, and she's just loving her newfound freedom. She loves the fact that she can talk to her boyfriend anytime she wants. For once, she's finally able to live life. And Nicole is having second thoughts about this whole situation because not only did she find out that Natalia is still sending her money to the man's family and allowing them to have it, but she also found out that on Christmas she offered Natalia, hey, you know, I want to give you $100 just for a little welcome home gift so you can get on your feet. And Natalia was like, okay, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and give you my Cash App and you can Cash App it to me. Nicole originally tried just giving her cash, and Natalia turned down the cash and suggested it be sent through Cash App. And after Nicole sent it, she realized she sent the $100 to Cynthia. So here's Cynthia now hustling money out of Nicole. And Nicole got really upset because she wanted this money for Natalia, not for Cynthia. Before Natalia was picked up by Nicole and left the man's family, she had nothing but bad things to say about the man's family, about how controlling and terrible they were. But once she got to Nicole's house, it was a completely different story. It's like she did a complete 180. All she was doing was talking about how great the mans were, was completely defending them anytime anybody had anything bad to say about them. And even when people had concrete proof in her face that they were trying to show her, she refused to look at it. Like, the producers were able to talk to numerous people who knew for a fact that the man's family were putting hands on their kids. Like, one guy said that he had the man's family watching his son and found out that his son was being whooped with a belt, and he was put in the corner and put in timeout, and he wasn't allowed to go to the bathroom, and he ended up peeing on himself. Then another man came out and said that one time he heard a child screaming. He snuck in the man's family house, and he was a family friend, and he snuck down the steps and he took his shoes off before going down the steps so he could be extra quiet. And once he made it to the bottom of the steps, he was in horror at what his eyes were seeing. He saw Antoine beating Natalia with a belt viciously and beating her to a pulp pretty much with his hands and fist. He said he just saw Natalia with her head down crying. He said the whole experience traumatized him and he feels really bad for what Natalia had to go through. So the DePaul family were trying to be understanding. They're like, okay, she's been through a lot of trauma. Maybe she is just terrified of Antoine and Cynthia because of everything they've done to her over the years. I mean, for good reason. And Natalia still was being adamant that the man's family were good people. And finally, Nicole sat Natalia down and she's like, look, I want to know what's going on, because before you came down here, you were saying the complete opposite of what you're saying now. And Natalia was like denying it, acting like, oh no, I wasn't. And she's like, no, yes, you were. And even your boyfriend was saying the same thing, and I had the screenshots to prove it. And it just seemed like Natalia was doing everything in her power to protect the man's family. She would tell the producers that. She would tell Nicole that. She would tell everybody that the man's family was just so wonderful. She would call them every day, be on the phone with them all day, and be all lovey-dovey with them. Natalia was always defending them to producers. So finally, Nicole decided to set all these cameras up around her house, and she recorded Natalia when the cameras went around. And once she got comfortable enough, she would admit here and there, oh yeah, they put me through hell. They put their hands on me. And the cameras were picking up phone conversations she was having with her boyfriend where she was talking about how terrible they were. So I was thinking it could have been one of multiple things. Maybe she's just extremely brainwashed, or maybe she just doesn't have a lot of life experience, so she doesn't really have a backbone. As I mentioned earlier, maybe she's just trying to take advantage of everybody and stack her money so she can go live with her boyfriend. Or maybe this is a plot by Natalia and the Man's family for them to get another season. And that's kind of what I'm starting to lean towards. And we'll get more into this theory later. But here's the thing. The HBO producers said after season 2, they thought they were going to wrap everything up in a bow and be done with it for good. And next thing you know, Natalia is having all this drama with the Man's family. They fly out, and then once they show up, everything's suddenly good. Maybe the Man's family greedy ways are starting to rub off on Natalia, and they just did this all for some more camera time and another season. And you know, the Man's family is going to love that because they know everything that Natalia makes is going to go right into their pockets. I'm just glad they brought in a lot of side characters to help tell this story, because if we were just going strictly off Natalie's narrative, then we'd probably still be out here thinking that the Man's family are some saints out here when they're clearly not, and they're just very money hungry and taking advantage of the whole situation. And Natalia hasn't been forthcoming whatsoever when it comes to information, and I can understand why the network doesn't want to continue working with her and why they're making this or calling this the final chapter in the last season, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed about, because I have loved every season. I feel like every season of The Curious Case of Natalia Grace has got even better with each season, and this last season, season 3, baby, I could not leave the edge of my couch. I was so freaking invested into every minute. I didn't want to have to even get up and use the bathroom or anything. I'm just sitting there holding it, shaking, because it was so damn entertaining. So I highly recommend it if you haven't already seen it. These are just the first 2 episodes. But a lot has happened since Natalia's last season. And they ended the second episode with Natalia talking about, oh yeah, the Man's family, they never put hands on me. And then they show a scene where Natalia is riding a scooter and Cynthia didn't know the cameras were rolling, and you can hear Cynthia screaming out the door saying, I'm gonna get my belt if you guys don't get inside right effing now. And Natalia's just like laughing like this is normal. You could tell that Cynthia had a complete different voice that she was putting on for the camera when she was doing her interviews, and you could just tell that everything that the Man's family do is so rehearsed and so forced. But that is pretty much it, guys. That is the first 2 episodes. I will recap episode 3 and 4 in another video, but let me know what you guys think. Have you guys seen this 3rd season? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like I said, I wouldn't mind seeing like a whole season of this on a TV network. I really hope they pick it up, but I mean, if Natalia is just gonna stay with the Man's family, then I'm sure it'll get boring after a while. That's why I kind of question, like, was this all just for another season? But I guess we'll just have to see. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching.